You received a call from an inmate at the Department of Corrections. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Hello, Tony. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, yeah. That's a big news item now, and of course, I know you weren't surprised when you got to prison, but and for somebody who studied crime and studied investigations, he had to have been familiar with prison life. He confessed to killing four university students, stabbed them to death, and then he goes into prison and what he thinks that people are going to love him and respect him and work with him on stuff. But I know my big concern is the staff shouldn't be treating people bad, but when you're in the prison with convicted murderers and rapists and thieves, they're humans too, and they're serving their time, and they're well aware of motives and conditions and crime and punishment. So he's amongst people that think a lot like he does, yet some of them, they really don't appreciate crime and people who are being abused, especially young folks and the elderly. And it's just that he was right in that category. I'm sure he would have been treated a whole lot better if the people understood his motive. Maybe he was going after somebody who harmed a family member, especially if he hadn't committed such a serious crime, though. I mean, maybe, but people are people, and haters are haters, and it's just a shame that he thinks that he's going to be treated well. Yeah, it definitely goes on everywhere. I know I've heard a lot of stories about federal prison, but in Washington, these people are treated really bad by other inmates. I know I was talking to a person who's was moved out of a room and her personal notes, medical notes, were picked up by another inmate who read them in the day room. This is what was going on in their private session, and that's partly the staff because they're moving people out thinking, well, you committed this infraction and you're going to solitary confinement. We don't have to respect your property. A lot of property is broken, stolen, or just goes missing. Nobody knows what happened to it. And that right there, I know when my fiance got moved out, we worked together to order her some new stuff because a lot of stuff isn't replaced. And that that's just a concern. That's just something that people deal with. And hopefully, when you do get out, you'll be able to tell a story like that. And those who watch videos or listen to podcasts or even read social media, maybe even books,
You have 60 seconds remaining.
can learn what to expect when they do go to jail and prison. So we got to do what we can do. Okay. Yeah. Well, it was nice to hear from you, and I'll definitely yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll pass the message on to him, and the more support we get, the better. So keep reaching out, and don't let anything get to you
You
down.
have 30 seconds remaining.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, just send me a little message, and I'll get it out there, and every little bit helps. And like I tell people constantly, you never know when you're going to be saying the right things to help prevent something. Okay, well, take care and don't be a stranger. All right, you bet. I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Thank you for
Hello, and welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn, and in this episode, I based this call on some recent events, and it's been going on for quite some time now. And it's the security of people in prison. And although we want to acknowledge that we care about all folks and that all folks are equal, we tend to ignore people who get locked up. In the Constitution, they're basically slaves. So when the slaves were freed, prisoners were considered pretty much property. You could say they're like property of the state or the federal prison. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to watch out for, because treating these people like we treated slaves years ago is not the right thing to do. And these people, they do have rights, and we need to respect that. And the staff needs to understand that. Now, as I was talking about in the conversation, other inmates, these are convicted criminals. These people show disrespect for the law. And when you gather a whole bunch of people, matter of fact, a 100% group of people that have disrespect for the law, there's going to be conflict. Now, yeah, I do know that not everybody in prison is guilty, and there's groups that work to try to get them out, and sometimes it takes a while. But when you're in prison, you get a little bit of a resentment, and then there's frustration because you're trying. And those folks are sitting in there going through their trauma, and then somebody comes in, and of course they're going to look at that person and just say, you're guilty. I'm not. And as long as I'm in here with you, it doesn't mean I have to like you. So there'll be a little bit of conflict there too. So no matter what the background, things can happen. And I'm hoping to draw attention to the same thing that's going on with Brian Kohlberger. He went to prison for murder, and he's complaining about some of the treatment that he's getting from the other inmates in there. And that's the staff should move him. There's a possibility he can end up staying in solitary for a while, or just be isolated in other ways, separated from him. And I don't know, maybe he will become a victim of violent crime in there. Maybe he will lash out at somebody, or maybe nothing will happen. It's really hard to tell. But he's going to be in prison for a very long time. When you first get there, there's a lot to learn. But as the years go by, there's a lot to teach. And with all the research he did, I don't think he really looked into what was going on in there. He should have spoken to some people. He should have watched some of the videos I have on YouTube. He would have a little idea of what's going on in there. And that's why we have prison advocates. And we want to try to look out for the folks that are locked up. And I don't condone any of the crimes. And I know a lot of people that are just violent criminals, or they commit crimes that are just disgusting. But I am a big proponent of human rights. And a good way to show support for human rights is to protect everybody. Of course, back in the days of slavery, we really respected those who were trying to get rights to the slaves, rights to even the slave owners, and rights to children, rights to women. But if there's this little thing like a crime, and then suddenly you want to turn away from it, that we need to watch out for. Because if you can respect the rights of all people, and that's basically what the American Civil Liberties Union does, ACLU. We'll look at it and say this person is a neo-Nazi, but they'll go to court and fight for this person's rights. And so we have to see that when people are locked up, we don't allow prison officials and contractors or anybody to take advantage of them. My fiance was talking about she feels degraded when she's working for these contractors that just stand over her, or while she's down cleaning the floor on her hands and knees, they're walking across or pushing things on there. Or when one of the ladies said that she was going through a strip search, and one of the prison officials was criticizing her body. And that kind of stuff is unnecessary. They committed a crime, but it doesn't give people the right to trample all over their rights. And it's like me. I want to get married. I want to visit my fiance, but they're just creating things to stomp on my rights. I have a right to get married. There's nothing that keeps us away from it because the state allows people to get married. That's a right, and we qualify under the state. All the prison has to do is provide a ceremony. That's the law. And the only reason they would deny a ceremony is if there was something going on with the prisoner or with the person on the outs, because that person could have gotten locked up in another state, wound up getting hospitalized, or could have committed a crime and be on the run. These are reasons to deny or delay the ceremony. But when there's nothing going on with the person on the outside, like me, and the person on the inside, like my fiance, doesn't have any anything holding her back, like she's not in the hospital or she's not in solitary, that should allow me to go in there and marry her. I know back in COVID, they had a lockdown, and so people couldn't visit, and marriage was pretty much impossible, but you still have the video. So there are ways around it. These guys just came up with I'm a threat to my fiance and that she's a vulnerable person. Of course, I've since researched it and she's not a vulnerable adult. That's something that's determined by DSHS. And then these folks have certain rights. One of them is that they could get married. And to say that she's a vulnerable adult means that they're her caretaker, which she knows nothing about. So they're just creating things. And it's blatant things that they're doing. They're just stomping all over our rights for their own personal benefit. And having a podcast, having a social media presence, constantly calling them out is not good for them. If I had played their game and didn't publish anything negative, I'm sure I'd be married to her by now. But I can't do that. No advocate could do that. And we shouldn't have to be in a situation where we do what is right. I mean, if I was going in there lying about them, or if I was trying to smuggle in contraband, or if I was trying to, let's say, criticize them for doing their job, if there's a violent criminal in there and they're trying to restrain the person and the person is just getting violent and a prison official gets hurt, and I'm criticizing the prison and degrading the prison official, I could see that as being something people don't want. But when I'm broadcasting that there's people in there physically assaulting folks or poisoning people, or in the case of Shane Goldsby, when his roommate was the murderer, I mean, not the murderer, but the rapist of his sister, that's something that should be shared with the public because we pay taxes and the prison should answer to the taxpayer. And look at the cases where people are escaping. Now you've got a violent criminal in prison who escapes and is running around out in the community. What risk does this person trying to avoid? They've got nothing to lose. And so you've got a murderer who's in for life, escapes, and wants to get a car, and the person says, no, you can't have my car. Who's to say this escapee isn't going to kill the person? Because after all, what's going to happen? If they get caught, they could tack on more for an escape, or maybe from some of the crimes they committed, like auto theft or murder or assault. But the people say, I'm going to be in there for the rest of my life anyway. Like if Brian Kohlberger were to escape, what's he got to lose? And we have to look at it like this too. Working with the folks, letting them know that they're not a slave, that they're not somebody who has no rights, that could help in their healing process is what we want. So if they should escape or should get out through legal means, we won't have to flag this person in our mind. It'd be nice to go to a grocery store and the person bagging your groceries was a former, we'll say, violent criminal who was rehabilitated in the prison system. This person got out, got a job, and is no intention of harming anyone, no intention of going back to the bad ways, who feels that life is worth living and that respecting other people's rights and respecting local laws is the way to go, then, we won't have to walk in fear and we won't have to try to check out people that we run into every day. But let's face it, you never know when you're going to run into a former convict, ex-con. You'll never know. And in my world, that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to have these labels. Maybe they wear a bandana or an armband or a necklace or something that identifies them as an ex-con. Hey, what good does that serve? And how's that going to help anybody? So the security and the safety of people in the prison should be paramount. We shouldn't have minimum staff so that they can't keep an eye on the folks that's going on out there. And training, to me, is extremely important. Train them how to show these people the respect that they deserve because they're human, but also have a strong enough arm to keep them in line should they decide to take advantage of the system or go back to their old ways. And that's not easy. And the things that goes on inside the prisons, it's a shocker. And the case with Dublin prison in California, they were treating it like it was a sex farm. These people can go in there and they could treat those women any way they wanted, and nobody was doing anything for years until it finally caught up with them because people pressed at it. And now that a lot of them have been transferred to other prisons or they're out, we can go back and let people know this stuff is going on. And maybe some of the prisons out there are changing their ways. But it's not going to happen unless we do something, unless we knock on the doors and broadcast this stuff. And I've got some more stories in the works, and I wish I didn't. It'd be neat to just retire that. But I've got a person in there who was attacked by a trans woman. And my fiance, she was very strong for the trans people in there, but now she says they need to all go. And with her history, that says a lot. And I'm glad she changed her mind about how she feels about them. But it wasn't because of anything I said or her own beliefs. It was because the system failed. These folks weren't protected the way they should have. And when I look at Shane Goldsby's story, I kind of think, did the prison put a trans woman in the cell with somebody who had been a rape victim or had been abused by a boyfriend or a husband? Kind of like what happened to another person when she was put in the cell with a trans woman and she said, I don't want to be around a man. I don't feel comfortable. Could that happen so that they expected something to go on and maybe draw attention to it? It could have, but we won't know unless we get some people to hold these prison officials accountable and let them know that people have rights. And yes, we're not a big fan of Brian Kohlberger, but he is a human being who has rights. And if he feels uncomfortable walking out in the yard with the other prisoners, there needs to be some kind of extra guidance for him, or they need to enforce some of the rules that deal with harassment, because these folks are committing crimes and he's a victim, but just because he's a convicted criminal doesn't mean he's not entitled to human rights. And in my case, it's a good possibility I'm going to have to go to court. And this is a federal case because this is the civil rights and human rights and constitutional rights, they all center around marriage. This is not a same-sex marriage. And years ago, interracial marriage was banned. But this is a freedom across the United States. And the Washington Department of Corrections is saying that if I were to marry her in the prison, somebody could get harmed. That's not a reason to deny a marriage ceremony. And it's not fair to her, it's not fair to me, and it's not fair to all people in the state who want to get married. They're saying that there's a restriction above and beyond illegal activity or inconvenience, like being in a hospital or being in solitary confinement where the person can't come out and talk, that there's other reasons for that. And if we don't knock on the doors and make this public, nobody's going to know. And with the state of Washington, you go to court, you win, they keep doing it. In my investigation of this vulnerable adult thing, I found out a person I've been talking to is a vulnerable adult and had been identified by the Department of Social Health Services, SHS. This person is classified as a vulnerable adult, but isn't being treated as one in the prison. Oh, we're going to have to file a complaint. So there's a lot I'm going to have to be doing this year, but I'm looking forward to it because I want to get it out there. And I'm going to tell you people about it too. So if you know somebody who's locked up, talk to the person. There's things that they know because their mind could just be wandering other places. They're concerned about their safety. They're concerned about their security. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about a friend, but they're not sure that their concerns have repercussions, that they could file a lawsuit or complaint and get things done. They don't know about that, or they just feel it's too much trouble, or they're too afraid. You on the outside can help them. You can file complaints for them. You can contact people in their name. I've done it and I've had great success with it. You can do it too. And I hope you reach out to the person. Ask them once in a while, is there anything going on in there that you would like help with? And if the person's discovering, I was served gluten food when I am supposed to be on a gluten-free diet, like one of the people I spoke to, that is something you could help them with. And you got to be strong. You can't give up, because that's what the officials want you to do. They want to make this difficult for you so that you just say, I want to give up. And that's the control that they have. And we got to be strong. We got to stick together. It's good to have people that support you and that support that cause, so you can sit down and talk to the people. I like talking about the health issues because there's a lot of people out there that are concerned about the way they're being treated in the prison. And so we need to look at that, and we need to draw on that and make it happen. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in. And remember, get out and talk and ask questions, and you can make a difference. So go out, have yourself an amazing day, and make fabulous memories for tomorrow.